Stay with us this hour to hear how the Mid-Region Council of Governments is planning for transportation needs in the future. I'm Gene Grant at the table with this week's Line Opinion panelists. Now, late this week, we learned that the Public Regulation Commission rejected PNM's request for a rate hike. PRC officers said PNM didn't provide enough information to justify that hike, and critics of the rate hike itself say PNM shouldn't raise rates to support the continued use of coal at the San Juan generating station, and there's opposition to PNM's request to raise fees for customers who install solar panels on their home. Julianne, I got to start with you on this one. Do you think this is a big win for individuals as I'm reading some of the quotes, or is this just a delay to the inevitable that might happen around September?
I think one of the interesting things about this is that it might show that all of this activism around energy, around renewable resources versus coal, and just around how much people spend of their own, personal income on these energy bills. That's starting to have an effect. I can't remember any other time, as a journalist in New Mexico for 13 years or more, that people have been talking about the Public Regulation Commission as though that's a thing that we should know and care about. They're out there standing in front of the PNM offices and the PRC hearings with signs. There were hundreds of people marching in the Capitol in the cold this winter around this issue. So I think that for those people to claim a victory is valid. It didn't get one vote in approval. It was a 5-0 vote.
Interesting point there. I'm glad you got that in, Stephen. It seemed pretty clear, the message from the PRC, as Julianne is mentioning. But underneath the message, what do you think is really going on here? Is it about renewables? Is it about continuing a coal? We have a coal thing coming up in 2017.
I think it was non-substantive.
Okay.
I think it was. If you look at the hearing examiner's report and you look at some of the reporting on it, it was all based on. Normally, if you're a regulated monopoly, which PNM is, you can look at your prior costs, and then if they're going to go up, you file a rate case and you look at historical costs.
That's right.
And that's what you base your future rates on. Here, because of all the changes, there's going to be a gas plant, they're going to get nuclear fuel, they want solar. They couldn't do it that way. They had to do what's called a future test year, and they had to do this in a graph, and they had to attach all kinds of detail to explain what went into this. Okay, they didn't do that. They were supposed to do it electronically, so that the staff and people who objected to it could substitute assumptions and see if how that affected future rates. They simply didn't do it. And that was the hearing examiner's decision. That was what the PRC decided. So no, yes, I agree that you're quite right. All of a sudden the PRC is front and center.
Right.
But technically, all this is an administrative decision. The PRC says you didn't do it right. You didn't file what you had to file. The rules are clear, by the way. They didn't file what they had to file. So that's how I see it.
And Laura Sanchez-Rivey a couple of chances to file as well. Why do you think that happened, the non-electronic filing? Not to think for PNM, but it seemed like there was a tactic at play there. I'm not quite sure what was going on.
I read some of the pleadings, and I read the hearing examiner's decision, and I don't necessarily think that there was a strategy there.
Okay.
I think, I think the real strategy is that they're arguing that they need this rate hike because of some of the environmental regulation and the renewable energy investment. That's the strategic part of it. And I think Steve's right. There was no substance along those lines that was explored in this case at this point. Really, the hearing examiner had the issue in front of him. Several of the parties that intervened objected to the fact that there was no transparency in the filing, meaning that they weren't able to backtrack and follow exactly the way PNM had arrived at those numbers to justify the rate hike. Therefore, not being able to do that, their attorneys objected. They filed motions to ask the hearing examiner to dismiss the case because it was inadequate. And he agreed with those motions, and essentially that was the recommended decision before the PRC. So ultimately, the PRC did not substantively look at any of this. All they said was, we agree with the hearing examiner. This is not something that's ripe yet. We don't have enough information. So you need to refile if you're interested in this rate hike. And what they've said is that they're likely to refile, and I've heard September 1st as a potential date. But their spokesperson also said that they might appeal this to the Supreme Court, which they could.
Right.
That inevitably, either one of those two, whether they file on September 1st, and there's some critics that think they're not going to be ready by then. Or if they appeal it to the Supreme Court, either way, it delays this potential increase in rates considerably for them. So they're looking now into next year for the potential finalization of this rate, and probably later for any kind of increase that would hit residents.
That's interesting. Dan, did PNM try to take too big a bite of the apple here, in your opinion? Was the ask too big and didn't have enough documentation to ask? Maybe if the ask was smaller?
Well, no,
Okay.
I think PNM is a company everybody loves to hate.
Right.
I mean, it may be the only organization that both Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals can rally around, and they don't like them. I mean, the whole time I was in the legislature, anything for PNM, you would be amazed at how you could rally Republicans and Democrats. I think PNM has spent a long time in the past kind of being heavy-handed, saying, look, if you don't like this, then we're going to do this. I think what you're seeing is the PRC. I said when we created the PRC, people would ask my opinion. I said, God help us the day they figure out how powerful they really are. And I think they're starting to figure it out. I think PNM's in a bad spot. I think that they've got to make some serious business decisions.
Okay.
I do think that there's some things that have to be looked at that I think PNM deserves some leeway with when it comes to what are they going to do with that coal plant up in Farmington. I mean, we're telling them to shut it down. We're telling them to clean it. We're telling them to go do other things. They bought into this renewable energy portfolio when Governor Richardson was there. They politicked on side of it. Right. Now they're saying, it's costing more money than we thought it was going to cost, which is exactly things we said to them when we went down this road. We said, do you guys know what this is going to do to you?
Sure.
Back then they said yes. Now they're saying they didn't know. So, I think at the end of the day, my prediction is, exactly what Laura said, that they, PRC didn't even look at the case. They just looked at the findings from the officer and said, we support that, and that's right. I think they'll get it filed. I think they'll get it filed in enough time.
Yeah.
I think they'll wind up doing what they always do, which is they ask for 12, they get 7.
Right.
They think they've done a great job, and 6 is the number they
Can
wanted.
we talk about that number
Please.
for a minute?
Absolutely,
I mean, 12
yeah.
is the number that people keep throwing out, right?
Yeah.
But really, the number that would affect people who I think are the most vulnerable in this situation, the residences and the small businesses, their increase was on the order of 16%. Large businesses weren't going to see an increase.
That's right.
And I think that too much averaging makes PNM look too good in this situation.
Interesting. Your thought on that, Steve? I've heard that as well. It's interesting.
No, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, there was no increase. I don't, to tell you the truth, I don't quite understand it. Why only residential customers would have
Small
to pay for the
business. They gave a pass on all
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah.
Schools didn't see anything.
businesses, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I think you're exactly right. Ultimately, what's going to happen is there's going to be a refiling. They're going to be cut back. There are going to be some of these salary increases that people with the PNM officers got. That's going to be objected to. And by the way, this is a very complicated thing they're trying to do.
Sure.
Because they're trying to predict all these variables. They don't even have signed agreements on some of these things.
Right.
So some of it isn't. It's sort of understandable why they didn't get everything. Their ducks in a row, so to
Sure.
speak.
Laura, is there a business break here Dan alluded to, do PNM? I mean, they've got a lot of stuff on their table they need to somehow fold into their thing here. Should they get a rate increase first of all? I mean, renewables, someone's going to pay for all this stuff, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, somebody has to pay, but I think, I think that, I hate to say this because it's such a cliche, the devil's in the details.
Okay.
Not to get too much into the utility rate-making issue, but the reason that we're talking about, only residential or only certain, there's different classes in utility rate-making. Okay. There's, utility big industrial consumers, there's residential consumers, there's different classes, and you can't, it's not exactly like you can just take from one class and subsidize another. In fact, that's illegal. You can't really do that.
Wait a minute, in Santa Fe, hang on, time out. In Santa Fe, you can take water that's money from overbilling from water and pay salaries.
No rules apply when the government owns it.
I would argue that that's not legal either, and we'll get to that. But,
Yes, we will.
But in this case, where the residential base is really the biggest, it's the most stable base for PNM. It's the largest one.
Yeah.
And
makes
they're
sense.
talking about a $7.80 a month increase plus a 16.34% rate increase as well. Rates and actual dollar amounts are a little bit different in terms of how that balances out. But I think for, talking about the renewable energy part, they're also talking about a $21 to $26 connection fee for anybody who has rooftop, PV, photovoltaic. And, that's a huge
That would
amount.
be solar for those of us that don't.
Sorry, that would be solar rooftop, yes.
Yes.
And that would be punishing people who are trying to do, what some describe as the right thing.
Julie, I'm going
Who are
to.
those some?
Is it punishing or just making them pay?
That's right.
I mean,
that's right.
There's a cost to that. There's, you know, and this is the deal that we talked about when they came out for the renewable energy portfolio. I don't think, you know, I don't think anybody, look, as a conservative Republican, I'm not opposed to renewable energy. I think it's a great thing. I just, if I choose not to get it, I shouldn't pay for it. And so telling people that we're going to push more of that cost to them if they choose to get it, I can see that, but I think we got to be able to justify that cost. I mean, just saying blanketly it's $26 when I put one panel on my roof, or it's $26 if I got a 30,000 square foot mansion and I put 8,000 panels on my roof.
That's right.
I just think PNM is, you know, it's the giant that everybody loves to hate. People can rally around it.
It's
I
the
think
allocated cost of
That's right.
performing all the services to get that electricity to and from you, and that's why it's a
Right.
set fee.
But I think at the
Well,
end of the
and-
day, they're going to get something.
But
out
what's
of this.
interesting, you know, your comment about you don't want to have to pay for other people to have renewable, but people who don't want to be on coal, who only want to do renewable, have to subsidize those who are using coal. And eventually, you know, right now coal may be more cost effective. Eventually, coal will be more expensive because there will be so many regulations. And a lot of people think there'll be a carbon tax even on coal
That's all-
generated
that's
electricity.
all good.
However, people are still going to have to basically subsidize
Well,
coal
that's all
use.
good, but that's the same argument they made about getting the renewable portfolio years ago. Oh, it's not, you know, the cost is going to go down, all this other stuff.
The
And
cost has gone
The cost
down.
is going down, but it still doesn't cost enough that people who don't want it shouldn't have to pay for it. And that's a totally different argument, but I think at the end of the day, what you're going to find out is PNM's going to get
You know, PNM's
what
the
they
only
need.
utility who can't seem to make the portfolio work for them. Every other utility in New Mexico has been able to meet the portfolio standards.
There you go. Coming up next, we take a big picture view of transportation and look at how people might get around central New Mexico decades from now.